What's going on, Josh? How you doing today, buddy?
Doing great, Daryl.
Doing great. Hey guys, I got an Air Force veteran here. I know, Air Force veteran. Won't hold it against him today. One of my buddies. I vouch for him. So don't mess this up, Josh. Okay, I have a bunch of pissed off Marines at me. Josh is a business coach, guys. He's done very well for himself after leaving the Air Force. He's helped coach over 750 businesses out there working for the Tony Robbins Corporation. And he's also created a optical business, which I'll let him explain how he helps businesses avoid the landmines that are out there in front of them they can't even see. Josh, take it away, brother. Where are you calling in from?
I'm calling from sunny California. I'm down in Marina Del Rey. So it's nice and warm outside and sunny.
Cool, man. So tell me about the first time it is and you started out as an entrepreneur. Was it lemonade stand as a kid? Like, what were you doing?
You know, it wasn't. I was actually, I was in college and I was more wanting to be in politics. And so I was avidly becoming a politician. I was getting a lot of people elected. I was president of my fraternity at the time. So it was still entrepreneurial, but I was wanting to make systems better. And what happened is I got in and we were the #1 house on campus in sports and everything. And then I wrote the manual and I turned it over to the next guy. I turned it over and he didn't even look at it and basically ran it into the ground. And I made a major distinction at that point. I realized if I get into politics, I have no control over what happens when I'm gone, and decided entrepreneurship, I can create a system, I can create a foundation and a culture. And even if I'm not there, the culture continued to live on. So that's when everything really shifted my first couple of years of college.
Nice, man. So in the entrepreneur vision that you had for yourself, then was there opportunity to make money, or like what exactly were you doing in regards to where you really had to make money as a living? Because I mean, if you're running for, class president or something like that, that's one thing. But if it's another thing to run, and it's a business at that point.
Yeah. So I studied finance and accounting in school. And while I was there, I worked at the Small Business Development Center. So what I basically did for 4.5 years is I wrote business plans and I got financing for different businesses. So I did it so many times that I learned basically how do you build the right financials to get approved for financing, and what works in a business plan that makes sense and doesn't make sense. A lot of business owners they're too positive and optimistic, and they don't really think. They don't think through what makes sense. So when you're thinking a lot and thinking through strategy, it really puts you in a good position. So after doing that, I started basically going into companies or people with ideas, and I'd build the business plan, I'd build the financials, and I'd take a piece of equity to help start the company. So in college, I started a number of different companies that I started out with just equity. I would trade kind of my time for equity, and a number of ups and downs and failures and a lot of stock options that never went anywhere. But I learned a lot about entrepreneurship and small business.
Josh, what do you see as the biggest mistake that entrepreneurs make when they first start their businesses?
Yeah, great question. I think that they don't really think through it. They don't really think through a plan. A lot of times they just jump in and get started because they're passionate, which is amazing. Most entrepreneurs are extremely optimistic. That's what makes them good. But slowing down just a little bit to think a little bit and think through the strategy and think through what makes sense. I think I have a number of mentors, and I have a number of mentors that run really big companies. Well, they'll go in, build a fund, start a company, and they have somebody run them. And they've constantly said the same thing. The hardest thing to find is the right person who thinks, and they can make quick enough decisions. They can look at what's going on and make a quick enough decision to take action, but they don't wait too long, or they're actually waiting forever to analyze a decision and they miss the opportunity. So it's that right balance between looking at information and taking action, and looking at information and not taking action too quick. I think if you take it too quick, it can cause a lot of chaos. And if you wait too long, you just stall out, nothing happens, or you get, analysis by paralysis.
So Josh, what would you say was the lowest point in your business life along the way? Because I know it hasn't all been peaches and gravy. Where was that place where you're like, down and out, in the dumps, you're not sure what you're going to do. You got left, enough money to maybe make it to McDonald's,
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually started a company and, went all in, put, credit cards, maxed everything out. And we
Woo!
Yeah, right. It's part of the commitment, burn the bridges. And we took it to 7 figures. And just
figures in debt or like?
No, in sales. So we grew
sales. Okay.
In sales. I raised about an extra 150 plus about 150 in credit card debt. And at the end of about a year and a half, that was around 2008 when the market shifted, I had a huge falling out with my business partner. And in one instance, everything was gone. So in one instance, I lost my business, went through bankruptcy. Everything fell off at one time, and found myself in a really tough place, licking my wounds for about a month. And that's when I said, who's the best in the world? Tony Robbins? All right, I'm going to flip it around. So I turned it around and went to go work with Tony for a couple of years. And quickly got back on my feet, started helping other companies and changed it from there. But I've lost everything multiple times. And I think what happens is after a couple times, you start to learn. It's like fishing. If I can just go fish, I can make it again. And you start to, it removes some of the fear of failure, and you get a lot more humble. And it kind of balances, I think, that I can do anything ego that's ready to take on the world with a little bit of thought.
A little more the I from Tony, right? So,
exactly.
So you've been in the Tony Robbins program, but before you got started on that, like, where were you going for your personal development to keep your mental mindset in a capacity to keep going? What were you?
That's a great question. I think around the time that I got into Tony was around when I started getting more into personal development. I think prior to that, I had the military backing, which of course drives structure and focus. And that, I think, was where I got kind of my initial skill sets of discipline, focus, commitment. I definitely had that very strong, which allowed me to become successful. But I think Tony opened me up to mindset and how to, move mountains, but just by changing your perspective and looking at things differently.
How important do you feel that mindset is for entrepreneurs that are out there in business?
80%. I agree. Tony says mindset's 80%. Strategy is just 20%. I completely agree.
If you believe that, and I believe that full heart, it's probably even more, why is it that all these entrepreneurs out there think it's about this newest Facebook ad thing or this newest like widget they can get or the website or some marketing thing? Like, it's like it seems to me like they're constantly looking outside themselves because they don't want to look inside to actually do the inner journey. Why do you see that people are doing that?
I completely agree. And I believe the strongest one is certainty in themselves, belief in themselves, trusting themselves, and the fear of failure. Because in the beginning, you fail a lot, and it's a misnomer to think that you're not going to fail. There's a million strategies out there, but if you just pick one and start taking action and learn from your failures, you're going to learn really quickly. But I see it's the analysis by paralysis syndrome, where people keep putting their trust in other people and keep wanting to pay because they feel like they're not enough, instead of just trusting, believing, having certainty in themselves and taking action.
What are some of the biggest landmines you see out there, putting the business optics on, right? Looking downrange that people run into?
Yeah, great question. So more in the business optics is once something's up and running and there's revenue, it's not necessarily in the pre-startup phase. It's once a business is running and there's revenue. So what I found, whether it's $1 million company, a $500,000 company, or 10 million plus, most business owners don't have their stuff together. A lot of them, even though they might be successful making money, they still don't really know how to look through their balance sheet or their income statement or their cash flow statement, if they even know what their cash flow looks like. Or if they do, they're not really knowing what's important and what to focus on. So I'd say, one, having their finances in order, knowing what to look at with their finances. For example, just a couple quick things is like their cash flow. If they're not hands on the pulse on their cash flow to maximize cash, they don't even know what they're looking at. So a lot of them may be wasting money in a lot of places, or they sell a deal and then they get stuck to go build. So they haven't really built systems and structure, and they don't really know how to look down the road to see what problems may come. So instead, they end up solving a bunch of problems as they come up, and they get kind of stuck. So I see businesses get stuck at like the 1 million, the 5 million, or the $10 million range, and they just kind of get stuck there because they can't use the same things they thought to get here to get to the next level. They got to think differently, and they got to use different systems to get there. And a lot of times they're using the same strategies to get to the $1 million mark, but it doesn't work to get to the 5, or the same thing with the 5 to get to the 10.
Tell me about the business you worked with and you took them up 100% in revenue. Mm-hmm. What was the differences you made for that company that the company doubled their revenue? What was the time period you did that in? And we're not talking about like 100,000, 200,000. You're talking about millions.
Yeah, it was in a 2-year program. And with it, what we mainly did is put systems in place. They didn't have any systems and structure. It was just kind of chaos. So we went in, we put in KPIs on the sales and marketing. We put KPIs, meaning optics. We started to look at what matters on their sales and marketing. So they didn't have a system. So we put infrastructure in place. We realized what was working with the marketing, and we're able to double the leads. By doubling the leads, we had a lot more opportunities to convert new clients. And then we put a structured sales process in, which increased the sales. On the finances, we started to look at managing their accounts receivable, which they weren't doing at all. And they weren't even tracking it correctly. So they could have gone out and gotten a lot more money to finance their short-term growth. But because they didn't manage it correctly, everything was kind of all over the place. So we were able to put systems in place to know what to look for, structure to tighten up everything in their business. So they actually knew what the products, the margins were. They knew what their profitability was.
You keep mentioning systems and stuff. What systems?
They were wasting money everywhere with expenses.
Yeah,
we were able to clean all that up. And then
are they putting in place? I mean, you mentioned systems. Like what are these unquote systems that, what are they not doing that you're able to come in and help them do that makes the ultimate just tweaking the business to take them to the next level?
Great question. Yeah. So for example, let's say an easy one that I see quite a bit is a lot of business owners are running around with their heads cut off and they're trying to solve problems. So one easy system is like basically retraining them and their staff to, before somebody comes to them with a problem, to have to retrain their staff to think of 3 solutions. So instead of just coming in and instantly solving problems, they can't even focus on the business. I'd say most owners can't even look at the business because they're too busy trying to put out fires and manage their life. So a lot of it's restructuring to say, okay, instead of people coming to you to solve their problems, let's teach a new system where instead of coming to me with the problem, come to me with 3 solutions, and I'm going to help you think through the solution because it's your job to manage this role. So for example, we'll go through each major role in the company and we'll develop 3 critical drivers for that role that they need to focus on. Now the employee knows exactly what to focus on for that role. And me as an entrepreneur and the owner, I can look at those 3 things. If they hit these 3 things, I know their job's going to be successful. So it's kind of formulating the structure of their team to have 3 critical drivers to know what to focus on. And then you help coach them to not solve their problems, but how to think through problems and then to report back if the drivers are on or off. So that just gives kind of a high level structure for it. But then we do that same process for everything in the company. So we start to go through and say, let's just focus, make it simple. Look at 3 things that if I focus on each of these individual areas, these are the critical drivers to make sure that I'm successful or that I experience failure or loss.
That's what we used to do in the Marine Corps.
Yeah. And then you can make it fun. You can gamify it. You can say blue, green, red. You know, if we hit the go, then the team's going, as long as I hit this metric and it's green, I'm good. If I hit a yellow or a red, then I have to write and say, I didn't hit the goal. Here's why. Here's how I think I can solve it. Or I need some coaching. Can you help me out here? So it now frees up the business owner to then just look at the metrics and to know what's going on with their team.
The internet cut off there for a second. So basically what you're saying, it allows them to measure the metrics and look at, and it also makes people think. You're like, oh my gosh, you have to use their brains. It's what you hire people in the first place for.
And it makes them accountable for their job. So I'd say another big problem is a lot of business owners hire people, but they don't give them a clear, I call it a scorecard. We put scorecards in place with actual accountable items. So they don't know what the target is and they don't know if they hit it or that they don't. So once you put it in place, it's really easy for both the team member and the business owner to say, well, this is your job. If you don't hit it, it's not my fault. It's your fault. It's your responsibility.
Absolutely. So it holds them accountable and their metrics, and they're driving the ship. They're taking ownership in what they're doing.
And they feel a sense of pride now. That helps with culture, and it helps with you now being able to take your life away, disconnect, and now focus on the vision. Now you have the time freed up to figure out where you're going. Again, as you mentioned earlier, to look what potholes may be in the way, what's coming down the road, what cash flow issues may I have from year over year. We had a drop in this month. How am I going to make up for it this year versus just reaction mode?
What would you say is the most surprising statistic that comes up for you where it's like, man, if they just had this one little tweak in their business, like what's some of the lowest hanging fruit where you walk in the door and you're able to just like increase the revenue by like 10% just by walking in the door?
Yeah, great question. It's in expenses. The largest expense that ever happens for a business is their employee expense. Most business owners are always thinking of how they can reduce how much employees are paid. So if they can just go in and instead of, what if the mindset shift, again, this is a mindset note. What if their mindset was not in how to pay them less, but how for that employee to make more to hit the business goals? So if they just changed one metric to say, how can I pay my employees more if my business grows this percentage? Or let's say I'm more profitable. So instead of them trying to look at the finances, what if one of their main, I do a lot with dental practices, What if the office manager now is responsible for minimizing expenses and they made more money on saving waste? Or if the business made more money, they would make more money. So now you're actually incentivizing your employees, building a better culture on just tweaking a little bit of a mindset shift to create a better environment, to create a better work environment.
That's a golden nugget right there, guys. If you didn't take that away, so you increase, you get them to buy in, just like you were saying before. They take on a project, you give them a metric to hit. If they get the metric, you make more money as a business owner. They make more money, and then everybody wins.
Well, yeah, and that would be a good example of a critical driver where that's their target, their standard. Another big one is I see a lot of businesses that don't actually put a goal in place. You'd be surprised how many times we sit down and I'm like, okay, what's the goal? They've never thought of a goal. And if they have thought of a goal, there's no actual plan in place that says, okay, we're at 2 million, we're going to be at 3 million. And so our monthly goal is this number. And here, like, there's no plan. They just say it over and over again and they end up stuck in the same place. So I'd say if we actually had to say the simplest way, that would be it. Just actually figuring out, deciding on a goal and actually writing a plan and then looking at it every month to say, are we on target to hit the goal? And what's the actual strategy? Like, how are we going to do it? So again, back to thinking, here's the goal. And let's think through how are we going to actually achieve this goal and make it real, not just like a number in the park. I'm actually surprised on how many businesses somehow miraculously keep growing without actually having a clear plan and without actually following a structure or system to be able to hit it. So when you have a system and a plan and then you build the optics to see if you're hitting the plan or not, it starts to become mechanical. It starts to become a system or a structure where now you can focus on, here's the system, let me enjoy my life. Or let me think about how I'm going to grow the business or acquire other companies, or start to think of my value chain of how I'm going to scale this thing.
How out of balance do you see these business owners you're working with? Because you're wearing like so many different hats and trying to do like all these different things, and they're tied to their cell phone, or they're worried about some call they're going to miss on the weekends, or the people that you're working with. How out of balance are these business owners you're working with? And then what does their life look like after they go through your program?
Yeah, great question. I'd say in the beginning, most of the time it's chaos. It's total chaos because they're used to putting out all the fires. With growth is inverse to control. So when you start to grow, you have to lose a little bit of control. And one of the challenges is they're not willing to let go of control. So they need to control, everything runs through them. So the business stops at them. So everything's running through them and their life is stuck. So when we start to build systems in place, they start to let go of control, but they have systems to still have the control and to know what's going on. Now they start to free up. They start to enjoy life. It is a shift because at first they're used to that. They like it, essentially. But once it starts to free up and they start to enjoy life again, I find things start to change. They start to make more time for their relationships, take better care of their health, enjoy traveling and actually making time to go on trips and be present with their kids or what's going on important. And then really focus on the growth. That's when the growth happens because they're now starting to free up the business and empowering people to grow instead of being able to kind of bottleneck it with themselves.
That's such a key point. The whole bottleneck, wanting to be in control and not releasing that to their employees and the people that work for them. So that's a big mental mindset shift. How do you get people to overcome that?
That's a great question. I think a big part of it is working through the pain pleasure. Starting to build a process in place where they start to see the pain that or the cost, if you will, of what it's taking them to have that control. And what it's going to cost them if they don't change it and let it go, and starting to look at the benefits or, the pain versus pleasure. What's the benefits of the pleasure if the business were to grow and you were to get your freedom back and enjoy all these things? And again, the systems are kind of a safeguard for allowing that to happen. Mm-hmm. So in order to do it, they have to schedule time, go through the whole business and put systems in place and really the optics to know at a simplified level, how do I know that everything's working so that I can remove myself and start to move into that pleasurable state. So it's baby steps, but if you start to make steps and you see progress, then I find it gets really kind of addicting because you feel like, oh, now I can run the system and I can free my life up to enjoy life.
What's the biggest challenge or thing people come to you from? I mean, I imagine people don't come to you when their business is doing great and they're like, oh, everything's great. They probably come to you with their hair on fire, this big old ball of mess that they're dealing with. Like, what is it for you?
Yeah, I see three main areas. One is the business is growing too fast, actually. So it's fast growth But the problem is with that growth, they're not able to sustain it. So they don't really have the infrastructure in place. So recently I had a company that's $2 million company. They keep closing large deals. They're $250,000, $500,000, $750,000 deals, but then they stop the sales process to try to fulfill the actual process. So their problem is they're growing too quick, but they don't have the infrastructure or the system in place to balance that. So they take the speed off the sales and focus it on that. Another major challenge that I see is they come to me where things are stalled. So it's like they've lost, maybe the business has been around a long time and it's been stuck at 1 million or 2 or 5 or 10, and they're not quite profitable, but they can't get it moving. So they kind of feel stuck and they don't really know what to do with it. The other area is a crash and burn example where something stopped and they're kind of like hey, I need help now because I'm having a bunch of problems. I'd say those are kind of the 3 critical areas. I'd say the 4th area is somebody who's had it a long time, who's done very well, who's made a lot of money, and they're wanting to position it to sell, but the business hasn't made the money they want it to, and they're not willing to let it go yet for where it's at, but they don't quite know what to do. So they're kind of in this stuck place of figuring out, like, I don't have a son or daughter to hand it to. I do want to sell, but not for what it's worth now. And how do I increase the valuation? So how do I grow the company, increase the valuation, and position it for an acquisition, and do it in a way that I feel like I can get the return I'm looking for? So that's, I'd say, the fourth type.
Cool, man. Where's the best place for somebody to reach out to you, Josh, so they can learn more about what you do and how you can help their businesses take it to the next level?
Yeah, just my website. It's joshuawenner.com. So JOSHUAWENNER.com.
Cool, guys. We've been spending time with Josh Wenner. Like I said, Air Force veteran, business development coach. He's got the business optics on for you. So I appreciate you, Josh. You have a great day, and kick butt and take names.
Thanks, Daryl.
Well.